Welcome to Cybersecurity Under Pressure. Real attacks, real lessons. Every breach starts with something small. A trusted login, a missed alert, a system no one thought could matter. Here, we follow the incident. How it began, how it moved, what broke under pressure, and what security engineering and business teams should learn before the next one. Because the next attack will not wait for a perfect plan. Now, let's follow the evidence.
We are halfway through the week, and cybersecurity is still a blazing hot topic. Today, we are talking about how electric vehicle charging systems are becoming a weak point in automotive security.
And it's a weakness that, frankly, is scaling at a speed that is genuinely keeping me up at night.
Right, because this story has everything. A real incident, a lesson nobody wants to hear, and a detail that will make you check your own systems. I want everyone listening to just mentally place themselves in Tokyo. It's January. We're at the Pin2Own Automotive 2026 event. You have this massive conference room, and it is packed with the absolute most brilliant, lethal white hat hackers on the planet.
Oh man, Pin2Own. Yeah, that was...
It was a bloodbath. You have these next-generation electric vehicles, charging stations that look like they belong in a sci-fi movie, and what we witnessed was literally a digital massacre.
Yeah, a massacre is the right word. It was an exhibition of absolute vulnerability. I mean, the final tally was 76.
76 zero-day vulnerabilities. Unique ones. And here is the detail that just completely breaks my brain. Discovered in 3 days. 3 days. I mean, what are we even doing as an industry if in a long weekend people can find 76 brand new ways to shred these systems?
Well, and that's the thing people don't fully grasp, right? Those are just the flaws that the research teams managed to exploit, chain together, and document within this tiny, strict time window of a competition.
Right, under pressure.
Exactly. Now, extrapolate that level of exposure to the real-world ecosystem. You have malicious actors, cybercrime syndicates, who have months, sometimes years, to patiently probe the defenses of these networks without anyone running a stopwatch on them.
Yeah, they don't have a referee blowing a whistle. They have all the time in the world. And what really hit me while reading through the research we pulled for our deep dive today is just this massive paradigm shift. Historically, if you owned a car, your biggest security concern was physical.
Sure, like a busted window.
Yeah, you worried someone would steal your hubcaps or smash the glass in a dark alley to rip out the radio. It was a problem of brute force, broken glass.
Right, the threat basically ended at the hood of your car.
But now, I mean, the reality is you have to worry that someone sitting in a basement on another continent might remotely compromise a high-voltage computer, take total control of your 2-ton vehicle, extract your financial data, and, oh, by the way, maybe destabilize the power grid for your entire neighborhood. And all of this through what basically looks like a modern gas pump.
It's wild when you put it like that.
It really is. So our mission today, for you listening, whether you already have an EV in your garage or you're just thinking about buying one down the line, is to unpack this nightmare. We really need to dissect how we allowed these public and private charging stations to become highly complex computers operating with almost zero protection.
Well, it's because we've essentially created this perfect storm of vulnerability. You have this critical tech being deployed, and it's evolving so much faster than the regulatory frameworks can keep up, and more importantly, faster than corporate security teams can manage.
Because they're just rushing to get them in the ground.
Exactly. You're mixing heavy industrial hardware with these super agile cloud applications, all driven by this massive commercial urgency to plant one of these things on every single street corner on the planet. Which brings us right to the heart of the issue, what I like to call the illusion of physical scale. Because the expansion we are talking about is insane. The infrastructure numbers I was looking at are staggering. 192,000 physical charging ports in the US alone. Another 34,000 or so in Canada.
Yep, they are everywhere. It's like we built a massive global network of internet-connected computers, left them sitting out in the rain in desolate parking lots and gas stations, and just basically forgot to put passwords on half of them. The physical expansion has entirely eclipsed what the analysts at Upstream Security call their cybersecurity maturity.
That analogy of the computers left out in the street is painfully accurate, but honestly, I think it even falls short. Because the fundamental issue here, the root of all those 0 days at Pew 22 is this tectonic mismatch in how we even understand the technology.
What do you mean by mismatch?
Well, the operators of these EV supply equipment units, the EVSCs, they're often energy companies or these new infrastructure startups. And they are trying to protect critical cyberkinetic systems using, well, traditional office IT tools.
So they're using band-aids to stop an arterial bleed.
That's exactly it. They're trying to use conventional network firewalls and standard antivirus solutions that were built for email servers, and they're slapping them onto embedded firmware, microcontrollers, programmable logic protocols, stuff that operates at the bare metal level.
And that just doesn't translate.
Not at all. Your office software cannot protect a machine that is engineered to pump 800 volts of electricity.
Okay, wait, let me stop you right there, because I really want to address something I've been thinking about, and I bet a lot of you listening have this in your head too. I call it the illusion of the plug. Like, isn't a charger at its most basic core just a giant, glorified, extremely expensive extension cord?
Oh, I wish. I really do.
But think about the physical action. You drive up, you grab the hose, you plug it into your car, those thick copper pins make contact, electricity flows into the battery, and you're done. It's basic physics. Where on earth is the attack surface on a cable that just pushes raw current?
Yeah, that is the sweet, blissful ignorance of the early days of electrification right there. I genuinely wish it was just a heavy-duty extension cord. But the reality is so much more terrifying. When you take that heavy connector and snap it into your vehicle, electricity doesn't just start flowing immediately.
It isn't.
No. If it did, you would probably fry the car's circuits instantly or electrocute yourself. What actually happens in that first millisecond is a massive digital handshake.
A handshake, like two old dial-up modems connecting.
More like a high-speed security interrogation. The car and the charger have to have this incredibly detailed technical conversation before a single electron of power is authorized to move.
Okay, so what are they talking about?
The charger, through these specific communication pins inside that cable, basically asks the car, hey, who are you exactly? What is your vehicle identification number, your VIN? What kind of battery chemistry are you running? What is your current temperature, your state of charge? How much maximum current can you take right now without bursting into flames?
Okay, so the charger is basically acting like a bouncer at a club, validating the car's ID.
Exactly, and it doesn't even stop there. Once the car responds and they agree on the physics parameters, the charger turns around, so to speak, and opens a connection over cellular internet or Wi-Fi to an application programming interface, a cloud API.
Right, calling home.
Yep. And it tells its central server, hey, I've got this specific vehicle plugged into port 3. Does this user have funds in their digital wallet? Is their credit card active? What is the dynamic billing rate in this exact zip code right this second?
My God, so I'm not plugging in a cable. I am initiating a full-spectrum network transaction.
It is a hyper-complex network choreography. You are chaining together vehicle identifiers, digital certificates, dynamic charging profiles, user accounts, cloud databases, mobile apps, and international payment gateways. And it all happens in milliseconds.
That is insane.
It really is. Literally a high-performance edge computer fully integrated with the commercial cloud that, oh, by the way, just also happens to dispense lethal levels of electricity as a side feature.
And when you read the research, like that upstream security report we devoured for this deep dive, it is just brutal to see the state of that edge computer. They point directly to the fact that this entire emerging industry lacks the most basic encryption standards.
Yeah, it's bad.
They mention that they suffer from authentication gaps that would embarrass a college freshman in computer science. We are basically connecting our $80,000 vehicles to charging ports in a dark grocery store parking lot that have less perimeter security than my Netflix account.
Oh, I guarantee you it is so much worse than your Netflix account. At least Netflix encrypts its streaming traffic by default, you know? So your neighbor can't intercept the data packets and see exactly what episode you're watching.
Right.
What Upstream Security pointed out with a lot of alarm is this chronic lack of encryption standards at the communication layer of these chargers. This means that the data flowing between that machine on the street and the energy network is often traveling in plain text. It is not scrambled at all.
So anyone sniffing the network can just read it like an open book.
Exactly, and the authentication gaps mean the mechanisms the charger uses to verify who on Earth is sending it, remote commands, are incredibly weak, or sometimes just non-existent. Think about it from a tactical perspective. If you don't really know who is talking to you, and on top of that, you aren't hiding what you're talking about, you are a static target with a neon sign flashing "Attack Me."
Okay, I think we have permanently destroyed the illusion of the plug. We get that these posts on the street are vulnerable, unprotected computers. So let's actually dig into the tactics. How are the hackers actually getting in? Let's talk about the attack vectors.
Sure, let's get into it.
When I went through the research notes from the OSTI, the Department of Energy, they kept bringing up the OCPP 1.6 protocol over and over like it was the structural Achilles heel of this whole ecosystem. What is it exactly, and why is it such a disaster?
The OCPP, the Open Charge Point Protocol, you really have to understand its history to get why it's such a massive problem today. Essentially, it's this universal open source language that physical charge points use to talk to central management systems.
The cloud servers that monitor the networks.
Exactly. And version 1.6 is the dominant standard in the industry right now. The vast majority of public chargers use it.
So what's the flaw? Did they just design it poorly from day one?
Well, the problem is the original context of the design. When OCPP was first conceived, the assumption was that these chargers were going to operate inside private, isolated corporate networks.
Oh, closed-loop networks.
Right, closed loops where you could inherently trust every connected device. So the creators thought, hey, why add the processing overhead of heavy encryption if everything is sitting inside our own trusted private network anyway?
Ah, I see. But now we've taken that exact same protocol, which was designed for a walled garden, and we just threw it out in the wild west of the public internet.
You nailed it. So now you have this protocol that doesn't enforce encryption by default, chatting over public cellular networks or gas station Wi-Fis, and it is, like you said, just riddled with massive structural holes.
The research specifically highlights man-in-the-middle vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
And because there's no forced encryption, I assume it's trivial to just step right into that conversation.
It is chillingly easy. Imagine you are at a restaurant, you're giving your order to a waiter, but there's an invisible, silent guy standing exactly between the two of you.
Okay.
He intercepts your food order, changes it so he can order something way more expensive from the waiter, takes your credit card number that you handed over, and then when you're done, he hands you a completely fake receipt. And neither you nor the waiter ever knew he was there.
Wow. And translating that to the EV charger, the attacker is spoofing the connections. The charger thinks it is talking securely to the energy company's headquarters, reporting how much power it's pumping. But in reality,
it suffered a session hijack. The attacker manipulates the network traffic, maybe they alter the DNS resolutions, and they redirect that charger to an unauthorized server. The charger is now taking commands from a cybercriminal's malicious server.
And what can they even do with that control? Are they just stealing credit card data?
Oh, that's the least of it. I mean, they can steal payment info, sure, but they can also spoof charging sessions, making other users foot the bill for charging entire commercial fleets. Or, in a much more destructive scenario, they can launch massive denial-of-service attacks.
The DOS attacks.
Right. They can send malicious commands through the spoofed OCPP that cause every single charger in a city to reboot in an infinite loop, just paralyzing an entire infrastructure network in seconds.
But the cloud and the Wi-Fi aren't even the only issues here, and this is where the reading got truly technical and fascinating for me. The pure hardware and protocol flaws. I want to talk about firmware rollbacks, which we saw in the Point2Own documents. Walk me through the mechanics of a rollback.
Oh, the rollback is such a classic devastating attack against Internet of Things devices. Look, manufacturers aren't totally blind. Sometimes they realize there's a massive security hole in their code, so they develop a patch and push an over-the-air firmware update to the charger to fix it.
Like when my smartphone forces me to reboot at 3 a.m. to install a security patch?
Exactly the same concept. The charger downloads the new software and becomes theoretically secure against that specific flaw. But if the charger's update mechanism isn't rigorously protected by cryptography, if it doesn't strictly verify digital signatures, a local or remote attacker can trick the device.
Trick it how?
They can send a command that literally forces the charger to uninstall the safe software and reinstall an old, obsolete version.
Wait, you're saying they force the machine to physically time travel at the software level?
Yes.
Oh.
They force the device to roll back to a version from, say, 2 years ago. And the reason they do this is that the old version contains known public vulnerabilities that the manufacturer already documented, and the attacker already has prefabricated tools to exploit perfectly.
That is just diabolical.
It's like a burglar magically convincing you to remove your high-tech electronic front door lock and reinstall that old brass lock that everyone in the neighborhood already has a copy of the key for.
They know the current system is too hard, so they just downgrade it to one they can break in their sleep.
Wow. And then there are the math vulnerabilities, which Vicone detailed in their post-Peen2Own reports. They talk a lot about buffer overflows, triggering remote code execution, or RCE. And there was also this flaw that sounded similar but is apparently different. Let me check my notes here, right? The CWE839. It's described as a numeric range input flaw.
Right.
For those of us who don't spend our weekends compiling C++ code, what is the actual difference between these two attacks? Because they both just sound like overloading the system.
It's a crucial technical distinction, and people mix them up a lot. Let's start with the classic, the buffer overflow. This happens at the level of the device processor's physical memory. Imagine the system sets aside a tiny block of memory, a buffer, to store, let's say, the name of your vehicle. It expects a maximum of 20 characters.
Okay, seems normal.
But the attacker sends a name that is 5,000 characters long, and right in the middle of those characters, they hide malicious software code. So the system is trying to pour a gallon of water into a tiny shot glass.
And the water spills all over the table. In hardware terms, those thousands of extra characters overflow from their assigned block and overwrite the adjacent parts of the device's critical operating memory. And by doing that, the attacker can trick the processor into executing those malicious instructions they hid in the spilled water.
Which is the remote code execution, RCE.
Exactly. You now have total administrator-level control over the hardware. You can make the charger do whatever you want.
Got it. So that's a brute force attack on the memory architecture itself. So what about the CWE839, the integer handling? If it's not a memory overflow, what is it?
CWE839 is much more subtle. It is purely a logic flaw, not physical memory. It refers to situations where the software just fails to properly verify if a number entered by the user, or in this case the car, makes any sense in the real world.
Give me an example of how that looks on a charging station.
Okay, say the charger has a logic security gate that says, if the battery percentage reported by the car is less than 100, keep charging. If it hits 100, stop the current immediately so you don't start a fire. The software logically expects to receive an integer between 0 and 100.
Right, it's a percentage.
But the developers, in a rush, forgot to tell the system what to do if it receives a number that breaks the laws of physics. So the attacker, manipulating the communication, doesn't send 90%. They send the number negative 50,000, or they send 3 billion.
And how does the programmable logic controller handle that? Does it just crash?
It depends on the system, but often the results are disastrous. The software tries to process the logic of charging a battery up to negative 50,000%. It gets mathematically confused and throws an unhandled error state. And in a lot of these poorly designed industrial systems, when a critical logic error happens, the system defaults to a fail-open state instead of fail-closed.
Fail open, meaning instead of locking down and shutting off for safety, the controls fail by just leaving everything wide open.
Exactly. The logic lock breaks, and the door swings wide open. It allows the attacker to bypass safety checks, evade authentication, or just keep the current flowing without any restrictions.
It's unbelievable. We're talking about overflowing physical memory and injecting impossible math. And all of this assumes they're attacking through the charger's cellular network. But this leads us to the vulnerability that honestly disturbed me the most when I was reading. The physical attack at the cable level.
Oh yeah, the SWCCAN attack.
Right. Forget the gas station Wi-Fi, forget intercepting cloud communications. The teams at Peen2Own proved they could access the SWCS CAN interface, the single wire CAN bus, by injecting code directly through the pins of the physical plug. You have to explain the CAN bus to the listener because this completely changes the rules of automotive security.
The CAN bus is, without exaggeration, the absolute central nervous system of your car. It is the deep internal communication network that allows all the critical components like the engine control module, the anti-lock brake sensors, the power steering, and the high-voltage battery management systems to talk to each other in real time, thousands of times a second.
And by design, It was always assumed that internal network was physically isolated from the outside world, right?
Yeah.
Like a super secure intranet trapped inside the steel shell of the car.
Correct. Historically, if you wanted to meaningfully hack a car's CAN bus, you had to physically smash the window, climb under the dashboard, find the OBD2 diagnostic port, and plug a device directly into the car's wiring. It was an intrusive physical attack. But the EV revolution broke that isolation completely.
Because the car now has to have that complex conversation with the power pump outside.
Exactly. Because the vehicle needs to intimately communicate with the street charger to negotiate voltages and manage the thermals of the lithium batteries, the manufacturers had to extend a bridge from that secure internal CAN bus out into the real world. That communication line, the single-wire CAN or similar systems, now travels right along that thick charging cable you hold in your hand.
So when I grab that hose at a highway rest stop, that cable is not just a copper pipe for electricity. It is literally a direct Ethernet cable plugged straight into the deepest brain tissue of my car.
It is a drawbridge that the manufacturers have permanently lowered. And what the researchers demonstrated is chilling. If they compromise the public charger, or if they manage to manipulate the physical pins or the PLC modems inside the cable, they can completely bypass all the sophisticated wireless cybersecurity defenses that the car manufacturer built in the cloud. They just start injecting low-level, unauthenticated commands directly onto the hardware bus of the vehicle.
You're bypassing the castle's firewall by crawling up through the sewer pipes.
Basically, yeah. They can tell the brakes to disengage, they can tell the battery to ignore its temperature sensors. It is the absolute worst-case scenario.
Everything we are discussing here, CAN bus injections, man-in-the-middle protocols, firmware rollbacks, it all sounds like really advanced sci-fi, like intelligence agency spy tactics. But then, when you keep reading the sources, you hit the real-world examples of how actual charging station providers are managing their infrastructure, and the dissonance just makes you want to bang your head against a desk.
I know. The massive, unfathomable gap between the mathematical sophistication of the threat vectors and the raw, almost comical administrative incompetence of some operators in this space. It's hard to believe until you actually read the incident reports.
Let's talk about those absurd incidents. I mean, Puman 2 owned 2024. The researchers are analyzing a charging station from a legitimate vendor, a real company with hardware deployed in actual cities. And they discovered that the software engineers had embedded a private AWS access key, Amazon Web Services, directly inside the static firmware of the charger.
It's just monumental negligence. To put this in perspective for you, AWS is the cloud infrastructure that houses entire databases, billing servers, customer profiles. Embedding an admin access key into the uncompiled code of a physical device sitting on the street is, well, it's the digital equivalent of spending millions to build the world's most secure bank vault, with retina scanners, laser sensors, and armed guards, and then deciding to tape the physical master key under the welcome mat at the front door.
And just assuming nobody's going to look under the mat, anyone who plugs in a laptop, extracts that firmware, and runs a simple text search tool has the keys to the entire corporate cloud kingdom of that energy company.
And it is not an isolated case of stupidity either. Consider the 2023 incident with the Electrify America network, which was widely documented. Researchers found that public charging stations out on the streets were running active TeamViewer sessions.
Wait, TeamViewer? Like the free remote desktop software with the blue icon that I use to log into my grandmother's laptop to fix her printer?
That exact one. And it wasn't just installed. The sessions were exposed to the network and in many cases not properly authenticated. And here we are, back at the root of the cybersecurity maturity problem. This happens because they are treating complex cyberkinetic industrial machinery like it's an HR computer in an air-conditioned office.
It's just pure operational laziness.
Totally. The infrastructure managers think, hey, sending a certified technician in a truck every time a touchscreen freezes on a charger in the middle of nowhere is really expensive. Let's just install a standard remote desktop tool so the Tier 1 support team at our call center can reboot the machine with a click. The intention is cost savings and efficiency.
But by doing that, without segmenting the network, without using strict virtual private networks or VPNs, without multi-factor or biometric access controls,
They basically left an administrative backdoor with full operating system privileges wide open to the public internet, just waiting for any automated port scanner to find it and walk right in.
And that, frankly, drags us into the third major issue of our deep dive today, the blast radius. Because once we understand that the attackers already know how to get in through the cable, and we know that sometimes the companies literally just leave the TeamViewer backdoor open for them, the pressing question is, what happens when the attacker actually decides to turn the key? Let's talk about the impacts. And we need to start local before we get to the end of the world stuff. We aren't just talking about teenage hackers stealing free electricity to avoid paying a bill.
Although they absolutely could do that, and theft of service is going to be a multi-million-dollar problem on its own. But stealing electricity is anecdotal compared to the value of the data. Look at November 2024. Reports detailed a massive silent data breach of a central database belonging to a charging operator. It compromised huge logs of personally identifiable information, PII, of users across multiple vendor networks.
And PII in this context isn't just your name and email, right?
Oh, it's so much richer. They have your name, your banking info tied to the RFID charging account, the unique identifier of your very expensive vehicle, and the most alarming part, the transactional logs that reveal your precise geolocations with timestamps.
So they know exactly what time of night, what days of the week you leave your car parked and immobilized at a specific remote charger. They know when you charge at home, when you are at work, when you are traveling. It's literally a real-time map of your life.
It is a stalker's wet dream and an absolute goldmine for identity theft rings, or in corporate and government scenarios for intelligence on personnel movements. The security research from Sandia National Lab also highlights how this data harvesting is facilitated by the absurd exposure of Bluetooth Low Energy Traffic, BLE. A lot of chargers use Bluetooth to talk to the apps on your phone to initiate a session. And Sandia found that often this BLE communication is completely unencrypted. A criminal can just sit in a car 30 feet away with a simple packet sniffer and capture your login credentials as you walk up to the charger.
Okay, privacy and identity theft are terrible. But where this topic made me stop reading, where the dark humor I used to cope with technological terror almost failed me completely, is when the reports pivot to the physical threats. I want to go back to a term the Sandia report used, the potential compromise of EVSE life safety systems. So I stop right there and break that down. What does life safety systems mean when we are talking about an appliance that charges a car? It sounds like hospital equipment.
It sounds dramatic, but it is the correct technical term. You have to visualize the physical forces we are playing with here. In DC fast charging direct current, we are not talking about the wall outlet that powers your toaster. We are talking about industrial levels of power. We are funneling up to 800 volts of tension and 300 to 400 amps of direct current through cables into a highly volatile chemical battery.
It's an insane amount of energy flowing inches from your hand.
It is lethal energy. If that transfer is not managed with absolute mathematical precision, that amount of current will melt copper, it will fuse plastics, it will cause electrical arcs that can start unstoppable lithium fires, or just straight up electrocute a human being instantly and fatally. The life safety systems are the critical hardware and firmware components. The physical contactor relays, the thermal sensors in the plug handle, the logic software loops. Their only job is to monitor everything millisecond by millisecond, and if the cable gets 1 degree above the limit, or if they detect a resistance anomaly, they brutally stop the current, cutting the circuit.
But if, like you said earlier, a remote attacker manages to exploit one of those vulnerabilities, injects malicious code, and gets remote execution on the logic microcontroller governing that station,
the attacker now has the ability to rewrite the rules of that physics. They can, theoretically, override those built-in safety limits. They could send a command to the charger that says, ignore the thermal sensor alert, ignore the maximum voltage limit the car is requesting, keep pumping the maximum current the grid can supply no matter what, and do not open the relays to cut the flow.
You were talking about causing intentional physical harm through a computer.
It's a pure cyberkinetic scenario, using a digital attack vector to manifest thermal and kinetic destruction in the real physical world. They can overcharge the vehicle's battery cells, damaging them irreparably and turning the car into instant scrap metal, or worse, induce thermal runaway in the lithium battery, creating an explosive fire hazard in the middle of a gas station or in the victim's home garage.
That just freezes your blood. You are literally transforming a piece of green public utility infrastructure into a remote-controlled incendiary weapon. And that is so hard to process. But what is even more credible about this research is that localized physical damage to a single vehicle isn't even the ultimate nightmare scenario here. We have to pull the camera back and take this conversation to the macro level, into large-scale dystopian territory. And this brings us to bidirectional integration and the magic acronyms VDG, vehicle to grid, and V2X, vehicle to everything. Explain the concept, because this is the green utopia everyone is selling.
And it is a brilliant utopia on paper. The vision for the next decade of electrification isn't just that the grid powers the cars. The idea is that electric vehicles act as this immense distributed battery system on wheels. With V2G interfaces, vehicles don't just consume energy, they store it, they hold it, and most importantly, they can push it back into the public power grid during national demand peaks. Your car becomes a node in a massive virtual power plant.
Which, logistically, sounds like an efficiency miracle. I picture a sweltering Tuesday in August. I get home from work at 6 p.m. Everyone in the city is turning on their AC units. The grid is groaning under the pressure. Instead of plugging my car in and draining the grid even more, causing a blackout, my connected car recognizes the demand peak and starts feeding power from its massive battery back into my neighborhood grid, stabilizing it. And then at 3 a.m., when demand drops and wind power is cheap and abundant, the car recharges itself.
It is a marvel of smart grid engineering, yes. But architecturally, from the perspective of a military cybersecurity analyst, it means you just enabled a high-speed, two-way communication conduit directly between millions of vulnerable mobile batteries parked in garages and the critical infrastructure transformers of an entire nation. V2G interfaces elevate the status of a humble street corner charger. They turn them instantly into ultra-high-value national infrastructure targets.
So I usually use my dark humor, trying to cope with the ridiculous fact that if I misconfigure my car's app after a long day, I might accidentally cause the lights in my house to flicker. But what you are saying is that if these networks fall into the hands of a real sophisticated attacker.
Think big picture. If a criminal cell or a nation-state actor compromises just one major charge point operator, a CPO, and gains remote administrative access to a database controlling tens of thousands of distributed V2G chargers across a major metropolitan region.
They don't just attack one car, they launch a synchronized attack, like a swarm.
Exactly. They could use a vulnerability in the OCPP protocol or a cloud backdoor to send a simultaneous command to 30,000 high-capacity vehicles. Imagine telling those 30,000 vehicles to, at exactly 2:00 p.m. on the hottest day of the summer, instantly switch from resting to pulling the absolute violent maximum amount of power possible from the grid simultaneously.
Or the reverse scenario, which I assume is just as bad.
Worse. They ordered those thousands of vehicles, which were peacefully feeding the grid, to intermittently inject massive, erratic, out-of-phase power spikes right back into the local transmission lines.
You are basically creating a grid-level frequency disturbance or a massive artificial demand spike that the city's systems cannot predict or handle.
And that is exactly how you destabilize and collapse a modern, fragile power grid. Those artificial demand spikes or dirty frequency injections can blow out local substation transformers, cause the automated safety fail-safes at major power plants to trip out of precaution, and trigger a catastrophic cascade of rolling blackouts. You could literally blind an entire city.
We are taking the 21st century's star ecological solution and weaponizing it without even realizing it, turning it into the ultimate cyber warfare attack vector, hidden in plain sight.
Okay, I need to take a sanity pause here. Are we seeing this happen right now? Are foreign military units hacking charging stations at local gas stations today? I need to know if the sky is actually falling or if we're just seeing the cracks. No, the sky is not falling today, and it's crucial to clarify that so we don't just foster blind panic. The intelligence community and the researchers we read clearly state that there is no current evidence of advanced persistent threats. The famous nation-state funded APTs, like groups tied to Russia, North Korea, or China, carrying out large-scale destructive kinetic attacks against EVSE infrastructure. Yet, there are no blackouts caused by electric cars.
I feel a colossal butt hovering in the air right now.
A mountain-sized butt. Because what we do see actively and daily in the network logs are ordinary cybercriminal botnets, ransomware gangs, and vulnerability research scanners aggressively probing the ecosystem. They are mapping the network topologies, they are testing the API defenses, looking for misconfigured OCPP servers, and scraping databases. All the deep tactical reconnaissance work is happening right now.
They're drawing the treasure map.
They are outlining the entire attack surface. And the golden rule of cybersecurity is this: if a financially motivated mid-level cybercriminal can get into a network by bypassing a weak authentication check to mine cryptocurrency or steal credit cards, rest assured that a nation-state threat actor with unlimited resources can also get in. And what states do isn't steal, they hide. They infiltrate, they establish persistence deep inside the infrastructure's firmware, and they wait patiently for years until geopolitical tensions flare up and they need to push a button to cause civil chaos. The incalculable strategic value is already there.
Which relentlessly drags us toward the next pit of despair in our analysis of the sources. The metro grid is at imminent risk, our personal privacy and PII is exposed, automotive computers can be remote controlled, and cars might end up as smoking $80,000 paperweights with melted batteries. So the million-dollar follow-up question, who on earth do we blame when the music stops? Let's wade into the absolute abyss that is the legal and regulatory landscape of the EV ecosystem. It is the governance nightmare that the upstream reports highlighted in bright red.
I would call it the nightmare of fragmented liability. To understand the panic in corporate boardrooms right now, you have to understand the brutal paradigm shift the automotive industry is going through. For over 100 years, the security of a car ended, physically and logically, at the sheet metal of the hood and the door lock. If the engine was sealed tight, you were safe. And even as cars filled up with computers over the last decade, the ultimate defensive perimeter was the ECU, the electronic control unit of the vehicle. The car was essentially a self-contained digital castle surrounded by a massive moat.
Right, and one of the strategy documents we read, I think from Cone, literally had this blunt heading that said, automotive cybersecurity cannot stop at the ECU anymore.
Because the castle is no longer isolated. You can no longer just build high walls on your car and call it a day, because that castle now lowers a massive drawbridge of copper and fiber optics to connect to a strange village, which is the public charging station, several times a week. And the problem is, from a cybersecurity perspective, that village is constantly on fire. A modern attacker doesn't need to spend millions of dollars trying to hack the car directly anymore, trying to penetrate the complex cellular firewall that a BMW or Tesla engineer built.
It would be a waste of effort to attack the strongest point.
Exactly. Instead, they take the path of least resistance. They just make a lateral move through the adjacent infrastructure. They exploit an old, unpatched router on a poorly segmented charging network at a delivery van depot, or they infiltrate the free Wi-Fi at a car dealership, or they hack the outdated software on a public charger in a mall basement. Once they are inside the village, they just cross the drawbridge into the car the exact moment it plugs in.
Okay, let me pose a legal dilemma to you that I distilled from the liability reports, the situation that in my notes I've called the pasted text dilemma. This is the ultimate hypothetical scenario, and I want you to walk me through the legal carnage. Let's say I empty my savings to buy a brand new luxury electric vehicle. The automaker's factory assembled it to absolute perfection. It passes every test. It rolls off the production line at Detroit or Stuttgart as an impenetrable digital fortress. It's got real-time software validation, secure boot, military-grade encryption on the ECU. Everything is beautiful. I drive this hyper-secure tank for a week. Then I run low on battery, and I pull up to a high-speed public charger operated by a third-party franchise network in the middle of the highway. Turns out that public charger was previously compromised by a ransomware gang, maybe through one of those OCPP flaws we talked about. I follow you. The charger is compromised. And let's say the moment I plug my perfect tank in, the charger's infected firmware attacks the physical SWCAN interface, injects a payload that exploits a microscopic flaw in how my car reads voltage. And the result is that the vehicle's main computer permanently bricks the main battery as a poorly executed fail-safe mechanism. My car is paralyzed, dead, and simultaneously my bank data tied to the car's app is extracted and sold. My question to you, looking at the current structure of the industry, is, whose fault is it? Who owns that financial monstrous risk? Whose lawyers do I sue to get my $80,000 back?
Wow. Well, I wish you the best of luck trying to figure out which office to even serve that lawsuit to, because your question is exactly the bottomless pit that is keeping corporate risk mitigation lawyers awake and sweating cold all over the world right now. You have just described an unbearably tangled web of fragmented liability where multiple entities control the ecosystem, but nobody actually owns the complete life cycle of the session.
Break this down for me. Who is on my list of legal targets?
Well, you have a lineup of defendants, and they are all pointing fingers at each other. First, as a consumer, you go to the original equipment manufacturer, the OEM, meaning the car brand that sold you the vehicle. Their lawyers look at you and say, our car was structurally perfect and met every ISO regulation. The problem was the malware injected by the third-party station you chose to plug into. Sue the station.
Fine, so I go to the company that built the metal post.
You go to the charger's hardware manufacturer. They will respond, look, we just bent the metal and assembled the circuits, the hardware was fine, the software was compromised. The problem is the exclusive responsibility of the charge point operator, the CPO,
Right.
who manages the remote management system. So you escalate and go to the corporate offices of the CPO.
Surely they have to take the blame. They run the network.
The CPO will tell you, listen, we were passive victims of a sophisticated zero-day vulnerability attack on the cloud server release, which should have been protected by our cloud provider. Blame AWS or Azure for not filtering the traffic. And if you somehow get to the cloud provider, they'll say the regional energy network partner was the one who failed on their API authentication protocols in the first place, leaving the session open. It is the worst, most expensive game of musical chairs in corporate history, and nobody in the entire supply chain wants to sit down and take the blame when the destructive music stops.
They all just wash their hands of it. The liability just evaporates into the cloud. But reading Upstream Security, they made it very clear this has a time limit. They brought up some immensely serious regulatory implications here. Because, let's be real, federal governments and trade commissions are not going to just let this new national ecosystem burn to the ground without intervening, legislating, or issuing crippling fines to somebody.
Absolutely not, and government patience is wearing incredibly thin. This is where federal and European regulators are going to use legislative brute force. Upstream was prophetically clear about this. The compliance landscape is shifting beneath their feet. As sovereign data protection laws tighten, with real teeth all over the world, I mean, think about the destructive weight of GDPR in the European Union, or the growing ramifications of consumer privacy laws in California, like CCPA, the patience for incompetence is zero. Continuous leaks of personally identifiable information through porous, unencrypted charging networks are not going to be forgiven or viewed as just the growing pains of a new industry.
The regulatory agencies are going to start issuing fines.
They are going to issue financial death sentences. Agencies could invite massive monetary penalties for every single incident. And what people don't understand about the EV charging business is that right now, a lot of these charge point operators, the CPOs, they operate on incredibly thin, almost microscopic profit margins. They're burning capital trying to expand their physical infrastructure footprint, installing capital-intensive hardware everywhere before mass EV adoption actually makes them profitable. A massive regulatory fine for GDPR noncompliance, or for cybersecurity negligence that results in a massive bank data breach that could literally wipe out their entire annual profit margin entirely, or push them straight into insolvency. If the CPOs and OEMs don't sit down together and radically figure out holistic security at the software level, data breach fines will bankrupt them long before they can install the next batch of chargers on the highway.
Which pushes us inexorably to our last point of analysis, because we cannot leave our audience wallowing in this absolute despair. We have to address how you cope with this reality. We've navigated the dark pit, the power grid threatened by V2G spikes, personal info stolen, car batteries turned into firebombs, and the impenetrable legal maze you just described. So, facing this mountain of grim evidence, the question is, how on earth is the industry responding to get ahead of this threat? What is the counterweight to all this chaos?
Well, there is light at the end of this very dark tunnel, thankfully. And it comes from a long overdue maturation toward an offensive security mindset rather than a defensive one. Think back to the original catalyst for this entire conversation today. Everything we're discussing was triggered and documented by the brutally honest findings of controlled white hat hacking competitions.
Right, the Punon 2 event in Tokyo.
Exactly. The mobility industry is finally starting to adopt proactive measures by intentionally and structurally exposing themselves to these lethal attacks in test environments, instead of waiting for cyber criminals to discover them on the street. It's a fundamental shift. Look at the track record of the research led by companies like Vicone and their involvement in the Zero-Day Initiative, the ZDI, which the reports detail.
Yeah, the efficiency numbers they revealed there seemed honestly like a beacon of hope to me. They reported the discovery, verification, and responsible disclosure of 174 unique zero-day vulnerabilities in the connected infrastructure market.
And the statistical context of that number is what's truly staggering. Those 174 flaws represented 73% of all known critical market vulnerabilities in that specific industrial sector at the time. By aggressively funding and buying these flaws, which are often abstract and deeply hidden, from brilliant independent researchers before criminal cartels can use them to build exploitation tools, initiatives like ZDI achieve this invaluable tactical advantage. They can analyze the flaw, develop intrusion signatures, and provide active mitigation intelligence to their infrastructure clients, an average of 102 days before the original hardware vendor manages, if they ever do, to publish an official software patch.
A full 102 102 days of early protection? That is more than a third of a year. When you talk about the speed at which modern digital threats move, that time window isn't just a statistical luxury. That 102-day window is literally the difference between having a boring, routine Tuesday morning in your network operations center and waking up on the front page of the evening news globally as ground zero for a data leak and a national grid collapse.
It's vital. It is the difference between survival and corporate extinction. The overwhelming conclusion, the urgent recommendation echoing through every one of these technical documents and policies, is that the entire automotive electrical supply industry has to completely and permanently abandon this complacent mindset of treating charger cyber risk as a purely theoretical problem, or hiding behind the foolish assumption of, oh, we're too small to be targeted. They have to start adopting military-grade critical infrastructure thinking from day one of design.
And according to the analysts, this isn't just about using better passwords.
No, this requires deep architectural engineering. It means implementing ultra-strict network segmentation, ensuring that if one charger falls, it does not drag the entire central database down with it. It means wholeheartedly adopting a zero-trust architecture, where absolutely no system component, not the cloud, not the car, not the charging cable, automatically assumes that another component is friendly or safe just because they are physically connected. Every single interaction has to be cryptographically verified, and it demands constant, ruthless, hostile penetration testing at the deep hardware level and on low-level protocols like the CAN bus, not just running generic IT vulnerability scans that look for open web ports.
You know, as we unpack this massive, terrifying infrastructure, it inevitably makes me reflect on something much more philosophical. It makes me think about how the nature and the burden of social trust in our daily lives has just radically changed. Think about how we lived just a few decades ago, in the last century. As citizens, we implicitly and blindly trusted the physical public infrastructure of our cities. It was an unwritten social contract. Nobody, absolutely nobody, went to bed worrying that the humble streetlight in their alley or the gas pump at the neighborhood station had a hidden malicious agenda or was secretly being operated from the shadows by an international extortionate ransomware consortium.
Because back then, public infrastructure was just that, physical. It was cast iron, cement, mechanical valves, raw gasoline, and rudimentary electrical relays. The infrastructure was inert. It was passive. A gas pump couldn't have ulterior motives.
Exactly. And yet, look at where we are now. Every piece of public utility we trivially interact with is actually a hyper-connected Internet of Things device. Every new smart gas pump, every digital parking meter that reads cards, and definitely every massive 400 or 800-volt fast-charging block that we tether our cars to. They are no longer passive tools. They are dynamic computing nodes in an immensely contested global network under constant attack. And we are sleepwalking through a world where gigantic, integral infrastructures for society are, in many staggering cases, operating with essentially the same broken, neglected cybersecurity maturity that a cheap home internet router had 15 years ago.
And the tragic irony is that we blindly, almost without thinking about the consequences of that place faith, plug into those flawed, exposed nodes the very same massive, expensive machines that we rely on to transport our families and ourselves each and every single day. It is an astoundingly complex puzzle of risks. We have surrounded and wrapped ourselves in layers of amazing technological convenience, but it is becoming increasingly obvious that this apparent convenience is precariously tied to an incredibly fragile digital rope that is starting to fray right down the middle.
It is totally wild. It's an epical shift. Think about our past fears. Over the last 2 decades, we've conditioned ourselves and our employees to worry about ethereal threats on screens. We worried about not sticking strange, malicious USB drives we mysteriously found lying on the parking lot asphalt into our work computer ports. Or we anxiously trained our parents not to click on tempting links inside poorly written emails from foreign princes promising fortunes. Those were the peaks of our collective digital terrors.
They seem like infinitely simpler, quaint times in retrospect.
So much simpler. Because, fast forwarding deep into this decade and seeing the overwhelming direction these vulnerability reports point to, the most dangerous, consequential, and physically destructive digital connection you are going to make in your daily life will no longer even require a keyboard or a mouse click. The most dangerous digital connection of all might simply be that thick, heavy black cable that without hesitation you pull from a harmless-looking metal post and plug into the side of your family car in the middle of the night in the cold rain, desperate to get the kilowatts of energy needed to just safely make it home. It leaves us with an era-defining question that we should start asking ourselves very seriously. What happens to us as a modern, hyper-connected society when the physical, inescapable infrastructure that we literally and absolutely depend on for our mobility, our survival, and our energy is corrupted from the inside out, becoming the ultimate, most perfect Trojan horse ever conceived? That is all for this episode of Cybersecurity Under Pressure. Real attacks, real lessons. Until the next chapter.
You have been listening to Cybersecurity Under Pressure. Real attacks, real lessons. Real incidents leave real lessons. Stay prepared. Stay critical. And keep following the evidence.